Hi, I'm using a sample database provided by Microsoft called the Northwind database, and what I'm going to attempt to do here is execute a query that will copy some of the columns, not all the columns, but some of the columns out of this table that represents products that are being sold, and I'm going to store that query away, then close up Microsoft Access and open up an Excel spreadsheet and attempt to import the data that is produced by that query into an Excel spreadsheet. And then once the data is in an Excel spreadsheet, I'll work with it doing some other things. So I'm going to create the query here, and I'll be projecting the product names, the unit price for each product, and the units in stock. Okay, so there are a lot of other columns, but I'm just going to write a query that will project those three columns, and then those will be the three columns of data that I import into the spreadsheet. So I'm going to close up the table and go to the Create page and create a query in Design View. And I could do this in QBE, but I'm going to close this and go directly into SQL view. So once I get into the SQL editor, I can type in the query. Now, I had typed this in previously and tested it before the recording, so that's why I was able to enter that in so quickly. But the SQL statement then will project three columns: product name, unit price, and units in stock from the products table, and it will make no attempt to select any of the rows or to filter any of the rows. So I would anticipate three columns and 77 rows of data in my result set. So I'll go ahead and enter in the SQL, click the run button and test it, and I have 77 rows and three columns here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this query, which is actually saving those SQL statements as an object in the Northwind database. And I'm going to call this query QRY products to export, and save that. And now I'm done in Microsoft Access, so I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to make note of where I saved this, so it's in a particular file in a particular folder on my hard drive. And now I'm going to open up Microsoft Excel, and I haven't done this for a while, so I hope this goes smoothly, and create a new spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, I'm going to immediately go to the data page, and I'll have a option to import data, get external data from several different sources, and the source I'm going to use is Microsoft Access. So I'll click here and then navigate through the file system. So I will need to go through this sequence of folders, and in this folder I find the Northwind database that I was working with, and I see a number of tables and queries that I can import from. So I need to find QRY products to export right here, and say OK to that, and select how you want to view this data in your workbook, and I'll create it as a table on this existing worksheet, and it's attempting to store it beginning in the absolute cell reference $A$1. Okay, so I think I am showing you everything that's necessary. Say OK, and there's my imported data. Okay, so now I have it imported as a table, and I'll be able to perform a number of operations on this table. Now it might be after the table is imported into Excel that you want to work with it as a range and not as a table. So, you know, if it has tables, it has means by which you can filter the column data, but if you just want it as plain spreadsheet data, if you just want to work with it in a range rather than a table, then you can do that by pointing anywhere within the table, then right-clicking and choosing. You can choose the table option from the immediate pop-up menu, and then choose the convert to range option. And when you do that, you're going to get a warning that this is going to permanently eliminate the characteristics of the table. And if you say OK to that, then you get normal column headings, and you still have the style or the color that's been associated with the table. And if you highlight that data a second time and go to the home page and on the clear button choose clear formats, it will then transform the data into a range without there being any background color. It's strictly ready for you to work with. Okay, so while I have it in this form, I'm going to go ahead and work with it further, and I'm going to add another column out here. So I have unit price and units in stock, and I'm going to put a another column in here called inventory amount. And then put in a formula where I'll calculate the inventory amount as unit price times units in stock. So in this case, I'll put in a formula with an equal sign to start it, followed by a reference to the cell that contains the unit price, which will be cell B2, and that'll be a relative reference because I want to copy this down the column, times C2. Again, I'll use a relative reference to that cell as well. And then I think I'm going to highlight all this data and apply currency format. And then come back here and drag on the fill handle, fill this down. Now I've taken that original data that I imported and I've added another column and I've derived a new value. Okay. So what else can I do with this data? One of the things that I might want to do with the data, and I think you're going to need to know this on the certification exam, is to sort the data. Okay, so if I look down through this data, some of these fields, I believe, no, they don't. These are unique field names, but these fields are not necessarily in any particular order. Okay, so what I might want to do is then highlight the data, drag down. I'm having a little problem getting my mouse to work here. Let me try that again. It's not a mouse, it's a touchpad, and it's not as easy to do some of these mouse gestures with as an actual mouse. Okay, so I'm going to highlight all the data except for the column heading, and then I can apply a sort by going to the data page, and I have a sort here where I can where I can perform a simple sort that will look at the data in column A, in the leftmost column, and arrange the data in that order. And that's, typically what I would want to do. So a simple sort could be performed like this. Okay. If I undo that, maybe I want to sort by inventory amount. Okay. In which case I would be interested in units in stock. Now, as I look at this, and I was a little pausing there a moment ago because I just discovered this, I put a $ in front of units in stock, and this isn't really a monetary value, it's a quantity value. So I'm going to highlight everything here, everything down this column, and I'm going to go again to the home page and under clear formats. Okay, so it hasn't affected the calculation or anything like that. And now maybe what I want to do is find out what kind of products are taking up shelf space. Okay, and I'm interested in knowing what do I have the most of, and I want to display that at the top of the list down through what do I have the least of. And so I'm going to highlight all the data, but this time when I go to the data page and choose a sort, I'm going to choose the more complete sort tool, and I will be able to specify a column. Now, if there are column headings, these column headings will show up when I say sort by. Okay, and if there aren't column headings, then the names of the columns, column A, B, C, and so forth, will show up. So I want to sort on units in stock. That's not my leftmost column, this is the third column over. I want to sort by values, and I want to sort in descending order from highest to smallest, so from largest to smallest. And I'll say OK to that. And now I have a listing of the products that I have on the shelf, and I can very quickly see which ones I have the most of and which ones I have the fewest of. Okay. Now that the data is sorted, I'm going to apply named ranges to make working with the data a little bit more convenient. And in fact, I'll use named ranges for two purposes. One will be to assist me in navigating to selected parts of the spreadsheet. So if I had a really large spreadsheet with hundreds of thousands of rows and I wanted to go to a particular area of the spreadsheet, having it set up with named ranges would make navigating a lot easier. Also, I'll use named ranges in arguments for functions so that you can see how that makes writing the function maybe a little easier and also more self-documenting. So what we're going to do is pretend that if we have 75 or more items in stock, it's an overstocked item. And if we have 20 through 74 items in stock, then it's an optimal stocked item. And if we have less than 20 items in stock, it's an understocked item. So I'm going to take this sorted data and divide it into three different categories, three different ranges. So I'm going to start out by highlighting the data. Now I've ignored the column heading, just highlighting the data. Highlighting the data beginning on row 2 down through, in this case, row 17. And this would represent overstocked items. So I'm going to give this whole range a name, and to do that, after highlighting it, I'll right click, and on the resulting pop-up menu I'll have an option for define name, and I'll name this overstocked items. And you'll notice that it fully qualifies that range with the sheet name, exclamation, and then the range is denoted with absolute cell references. Okay, so I'm going to say OK to that. Overstocked items, and in fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to highlight this, do a Control C, and then say OK. So I've copied that on the clipboard, and now I'm going to highlight the next area, which will begin at row 18 and go down through. All right, let me undo that. I'm using a touchpad, and sometimes it's not quite as easy to use as a mouse, so let me try this all over again. All right, so I'm going to go to row 18 and attempt to highlight all the data down through row 52. And right-click and choose Define Name. And now I'll Control V and edit, and instead of overstocked, I'll say optimum stocked items. And again, notice the absolute cell references down there. So there's my second named range, and now the third name range will begin on row 53, and I'll highlight down through the last row of data on row 78, and again right click, define the name, and Control V and change this from over to under. Okay, so I have 3 ranges now, and if I want to see the optimum stocked items, if I want to go directly to that range of cells, I can navigate over here and type in optimum stocked items in the name box, strike the enter key, and it's going to jump me right to that area and highlight those cells. So again, with there only being 78 rows in this spreadsheet, it's not maybe quite as impressive or quite as convenient as it would be if there were 20,000 rows in the spreadsheet, but hopefully you get the idea that that can be useful in allowing you to navigate. All right, so let's take a look at named ranges here as they apply to inventory amounts. Okay, so we're going to go through here and we're going to highlight starting in cell D2 and continuing on down through D17 the inventory amount here, and I'm going to again define a name for this, and I'll call this overstocked amount, and Control C, say OK to that. I'm going to define a second range of optimum stocked amount, so beginning in row 18 down through 52, I'll define my next range, and define a third range. Of understocked amount. Make sure I spell that correctly. And say OK to that. And then if I want to see the total of the understocked and the overstocked amounts. Okay, so I'm just going to put the cell pointer here in cell G18, and if I'm interested in seeing the sum of the overstocked amount, comma, Control V again, and change this to understocked. Don't know, did something wrong. Sum overstocked amount, comma, understocked amount. Okay, not sure what's going on there. And I misspelled under. Try that one more time. This is supposed to make it convenient for you. Okay, so there's the sum of the overstocked and the understocked amount, and I can use those named ranges the same way I would, use an actual range as an argument in a function. Okay, I've done some things behind the scenes here as I'm working through this video. I went back to the Northwind database, executed a different query, and generated a slightly different data set, then imported it into Excel, and now I have a data set that includes not only the product names, which the previous data set had product names, units in stock, unit price, and then I derived this inventory amount by putting in a formula. Okay, so that much is like what you saw previously, but this data set's different in the sense that I changed the query, and now I have associated with each of the products the category that they fall within. So if we have, can't pronounce hardly any of these, if we have this variety of mozzarella, it would fall into the dairy category. Likewise, whatever this product is, it also is dairy. So some of these products are in the category of dairy, some are in the category of meats and poultry, some are in confections. So associated with every product is one of 7 different category names. And then once I imported the data, I highlighted the data in the category column, went to the home page, applied some conditional formatting. So I created new rules, and the rules that I created were based upon my using the format only cells that contain selection, and then choosing to assign based on value equal to, and if I wanted to assign a color to grains and cereal, then I would choose to type in grains and cereal here. And I have to spell this very precisely, grains / cereal, exactly the way it appears in the data set. So I would have to type in spell it. Cereals, and then chose to format on font color, okay, and I used selections from this palette. So I'll go ahead and you can see grains and cereals currently in black. I'll go ahead and change that to something else. That something else will be whatever this color is. Gold accent 4. And say OK to that. And say OK to that. And now everywhere it says grains and cereal, it comes up a different color. All right, so I've used many conditional formatting rules over here to change the font colors. And now what I want to do is sort this, but I want to show you how to sort using multiple sort levels. So I'm going to highlight all the data. Again, I'm using this touchpad, which is not real fantastic for doing this. I'm going to highlight all the data excluding the column headings, and then go to the data page, and instead of doing the quick sort, I'm going to use a sort here, and I will sort by, and I'm going to choose to sort by the category name, and I will sort the categories in order A through Z. And I'm going to add another level. So it'll be grouped by categories, and then within each category I will have the product names ordered in ascending order. Say OK to that. And when it is done, it's going to list all the beverages first, and in the beverage categories it lists the products in ascending order, and then it goes to the next category, which would be confections. Within the confections category, it's going to list all the products again in ascending order, so it makes it that much easier to read the data. Now, I highlighted all the data except the column headings, and then applied the sort and specified 2 sort levels. The other thing that you can do is sort on color. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do this. And this works better, I think, if you only have 2 colors involved. And so in this case, I have many different colors involved, so that I'll have limited success doing this, but at least you'll see how you can specify this kind of sort. So again, from the data page, if I sort, and I'm going to delete these, so I'll delete this level, and I'll change this so that I'm sorting the category name column, this time not by value but by font color, and I'm going to choose to put this color, can't remember what it's associated with exactly, at the top of the list, and I'll say OK to that. Now, it does a fine job of sorting and bringing those colors to the top. I think it would have had different results had this not already been completely sorted. But here's another way that I can visualize large sets of data. I can organize it by name, and then further organize it by colors. One last thing I want to do is if I am interested in only looking at, let's say, the meat and poultry rows, and in a spreadsheet where I only have 77 rows of data, it's not a big deal, but if I had 77,000, then this would be a lot more useful. Another way that I might want to work with the data here is to apply a filter to this column. Now this is not in a table, and we're going to look at using filters in tables, but I can also just specify an individual column within a range and go to the data page, choose filter, and then filter this either by color. Okay, so if I want to see everything of this color, I can do that, and that blocks out everything else, and I can eliminate this filter. Okay, so get rid of the filter here, puts everything back to the state it was in. I can also filter on text, so if I want to only see beverages, let's say, then I can filter by text where it's equal to beverages. And apparently I can also do some other things here. I'll let you figure that out because you know how and or works. Okay, and say okay to that. And there I see only beverages. All right, so that's a couple of different ways that I can work with a range of data, organize it by sorting, and then also apply filters. Next, I want to take a look at tables, and in looking at tables, I want to look at filters, total row, and styles. So we'll take a look at these in order. But before we do, I want you to see that this is the set of data that I was working with last time, and I've started a column F where I'm going to calculate how much each individual product's inventory amount deviates from the average inventory amount of all products. So in creating this formula that performs the calculation, I first highlighted all the data down column E, and I associated it with a range name. So if I go to the formula page and under name manager, I can see all the range names that I've created previously, and I have a range named INV amount, and that is associated on sheet 4 with the range of cells from E2 through E78. So close that up, E2 through E78. So here's E78. It's going to be all the data that you see between here and the last row down column E. So in writing this formula, I'm going to take the average of all that data in the highlighted range that is named INV amount, and I'm going to subtract from it the inventory amount associated with this current product. And then I'll go ahead and fill all the way down this column. So here again is an example of a range name, and it's also an example of how we would use name manager to identify any range names that have previously been created. And I can use range manager to identify the range. I can also make editing changes and change the name of the range. I can delete the range, and so those are several things that I can do from this dialog box, and I'd encourage you to play around with this a bit and get familiar with it. Okay, so I have this data, and I'm going to delete this final row 79. So delete it, and now create a table. So how do I create a table? Well, there are several ways. I would suggest highlighting all the data that you want to include in the table. And again, this touchpad is giving me trouble, so let me try that one more time, sorry. So I'm going to highlight all the data that I want included in the table, and then I can use the quick analysis tool and choose tables. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Or I can go to the insert page and there's an option to insert a table there. I'm going to go ahead and just insert it using the quick analysis tool. And when I do, it gives me a style, okay, and so I see that I have striped lines. It also provides me with filters for each column, okay, so that's just built right into creating a table. Now if you don't like the style, we can go to the design page, and there's a number of styles that you can select from. So just choosing, I don't know, one of these. Try not to waste too much time doing it. I can expand the entire list. I'll go with this style and go ahead and apply that. Okay, so any number of filters can be applied, and if I highlight the table, this is kind of maddening. Let me try this one more time. Alright, so if I highlight the table, again go to design, I've got some options here on the table style option ribbon where I can include a table row. Okay, so you should know how to do that. And the table row then adds a final row below the last row of actual data in the table, so it's going to append a row. It's automatically going to calculate a sum in the rightmost column, okay, but it gets better than that. If I click on this, I get a down arrow, and I can invoke any number of functions, and it defaults to sum, which is probably all right, let's see, in most cases. And some of these numbers are negative numbers and positive numbers, so that sum of and it's shown in scientific notation, so that sum that it shows here seems like kind of a weird sum, but it has to do with the nature of that column. What I can also do within the table then is I can highlight this cell and drag across, and I can include that calculation across all these columns. Okay, so in this case the total inventory amount, all right, is given here, and if I want to see the average inventory amount, I can make a selection. If I want to see the minimum inventory amount, if I want to see the maximum inventory amount, so I can choose different functions, but it's going to default to sum, which is most likely what you want to do at the bottom of every column. I want to cover one last thing regarding tables, and that's the use of filters. This was demonstrated previously in class, but I'll just do a very quick review of it. So I have a table, and actually I'm looking at a data set that was imported from Microsoft Access through a database query, and when it was imported into Excel, Excel automatically created a table. And this is the data set that we looked at previously, and I show the 77 rows of data from the products table correlated with the corresponding product category in the categories table. So right now, as we look down column A where all the category names are, they are in no particular order as they were imported from the database. And if I have a collection of data like this that is otherwise difficult to interpret, one way that I might be able to interpret it more clearly is to use filters in tables. And in this case, what I'll attempt to demonstrate is how I might be able to filter out everything except the products that are of the seafood variety. So on this text column, if I click on the down arrow and choose the text filters option, I have an equals option. In fact, I have something that begins with. I haven't really used begins with, ends with, but I think I know how they work, and if you're interested in knowing this, I'm sure you can look into it yourself. But certainly if I choose the equals option and put in seafood, should be able to filter for that, and everything gets filtered out. Likewise, if I'm interested in seafood that I have more than 100 units in stock, I could go to another column and further filter this using a numbers filter, and here I'll use a greater than or equal to and choose 100 and say OK to that. And now the only products that are being displayed are the ones that are of the seafood variety where I have 100 or more units in stock.